If you are just as unfortunate as me, who resident in Melbourne, Victoria, you probably are also experiencing the darkest hour of your entire life, the stage 4 lockdown. If you're outside of Victoria, you probably are enjoying some life back to normal. However, no matter how the environment looks like outside, nothing is going to stop us from sharing, and nothing is going to stop us from learning. Nothing is going to stop us from making progress in our career path. Tonight, we are quite fortunate to have Tahlia, who has many years of recruiting experience, to share with to share some insights with us. I'm pretty confident that everyone is going to benefit from tonight's session. Okay, let's get down to business quickly, and I'll pass control over to you, Tahlia.
Thanks, Eric. Really nice to obviously talk to everyone. I just wanted to obviously give a bit of context. So basically, I've created this slideshow from my years of recruitment to try to help you who are trying to find a job to be more successful and to try to find ways that can help you ultimately getting that to the next step, to the interview, and then getting that job. So I hope I can help people. And if you have any more questions for me after my slideshow, feel free to get in touch. So I'll just start by going through. So basically, I've got the Resume Guru by Tahlia. So bit about me. So who am I? Basically, what I've done is I've started in recruitment about 2 years ago. I was working and living overseas as soon as I finished high school. I moved to France and then Germany and Italy and was teaching languages to little children. I was working as a nanny, which was really fantastic. And I moved back to Canberra. So I lived there for a short period of time. I was just doing a sales role. And then I actually moved to Brisbane, which is beautiful, sunny. So I'm sure anyone from Melbourne is probably feeling a bit sad they're missing out on the sun, but feel free to move up. It's a very nice part of the world. So what basically a couple of things that I work in as a recruiter is helping people with their interview preparation and with their resumes, which helps them obviously get that job with the hiring manager. So for instance, I have worked with a couple of people recently. I've actually worked with a guy named Chris, who I believe is working, is tuned in tonight. Chris, I spoke to him for the first time, was struggling to find a job. He was struggling to hear back from places that he had put in his resume. And he was asking me why. Why is no one calling me back? So some advice that I gave him specifically was the style of his resume. He wasn't changing it per application. And someone who saw his background, who wanted one thing wouldn't be happy, and someone who wanted something else wouldn't be happy because it showed a range of skills, but it wasn't narrowed down. So we've sort of been going back and forth through conversations, and I believe he's got some interviews lined up. He's heard back from some clients, so I'm very hopeful that he's going to get a job soon. And I'm helping him through that process. And a second instance was a girl who I first spoke to. I found her on LinkedIn. I reached out to her. She said that she was happy where she was, but she was looking for something better, to work into a bigger company. She was in a very small startup. She was basically doing everything. And she wanted to hone her skills in a better environment. So the first time I interviewed her and spoke with her, she sounded not very experienced. And I thought, okay, she's not very strong at what she's saying. Nothing's making sense, and the interview didn't go well at all. Then I actually spoke to her after the interview and I said, did you feel that you told me everything you needed to tell me? And she said, no, I was shy, I was embarrassed, I didn't know what I was talking about. So I actually sent her through a template. It was customized for her. I did two main questions that I knew the interviewer would ask her. One was based on projects, and the other one was based on, tell me a bit about you. That's a very standard opening question that you're going to get. And I listed 6 dot points that she must cover off in these answers when giving an answer. I said not to make the answers longer than about 2 minutes. And to get all those points in without rushing anything, but mentioning everything that's necessary and relevant for this job. So we went through each point that I sent through in the template, and then I said, let's do another interview, like a mock trial, an interview. She said, okay. So I asked her the same questions that I asked for the first interview, and she was much better, much more improved. I put her forward for a job for Qantas. She got through the first stage, she got through the second stage, she got through the third stage, she got through all the paperwork required, and she started 2 weeks ago. So that was a fantastic success story. In terms of her communication skills, they weren't very strong. That was another reason why she was struggling with the interview. But I believe that once you have confidence about what you're talking about, you know what answers people are looking for, you are much more well equipped to giving the best version of yourself in a 20-minute interview, which is hard to do. So I'll go through a few things. An overview of the Australian market. So different types of employment. So I just want to run through, just so you're aware, when you're going forward for a job, what is this job exactly? So there are probably 4 main jobs I'll talk about. The first one is a contract that is an hourly rate. So if you see an hourly rate, or you're talking to a recruiter, or you're talking to the HR person, and they're saying, what is your hourly rate? This is indicating a few things to you. First of all, it's probably going to be a short-term contract. So you're more likely to be paid more money. So for instance, if you know your day rate, you're worth $800 a day. For a typical 8-hour day, you can work out the math. That works out to be about $100 per hour. You can probably put about 10% on top of that when you're doing an hourly rate. The thing with going through an hourly rate as a contractor, you know that you're not entitled to annual leave, sick leave, any sort of company benefits. Generally, you come in, you do your job. That's what a contractor does. Same thing with a day rate for a contractor. The only difference is if it's a day rate, there's likely to be a longer term contract, which means you may do more hours in a day, sometimes less hours in a day, other times same sort of lack of benefits in terms of annual leave and leave, but your day rate will be slightly less than what your hourly rate would work out to. Third one is a fixed term contract. Now, a fixed term contract refers to a period of time in which you are contracted to that company, but it works under a salary benefit. So to make more sense, you'll see a fixed term contract for 6 months. It will say a yearly salary of $120,000, which means in that 6 months, you're going to get paid $60,000. You are entitled to employer benefits with a fixed term contract. So you will get things such as annual leave, sick leave, and any other benefits that come with that company. Everything is disclosed within a contract. Make sure you read your contract thoroughly. It does change from place to place. One other key thing to know is that in Australia, with contracts, you are not legally binded to give a notice period, and neither is your employer. A contract will generally state a term in which you should give a notice period by good faith. It is regular and good faith to give 2 weeks notice, but often it's not essential. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Whereas if you're going through a permanent role, the first 6 months is probation period. You will have about 2 weeks notice period, if any, through that time, and then after 6 months it will be a 4-week notice period. 2 to 4 weeks, it depends on the company, but 4 weeks is pretty standard. So that's a bit of a wrap up there. So information about the job market. So I want to talk about this to people because I think coming in and talking and applying for jobs and you don't care where you live in Australia, this is important. So in Sydney, Sydney is the biggest city in Australia. I think it's got nearly 5 million people, and it has got the largest job market. You will get paid quite a lot of money in Sydney, but the living expenses are very high, which I'm sure you know. So very hard to buy a house, but if you are making a lot of money or contracting, then that's fine. If you are looking for taking a step down, the Melbourne job market is the second largest in Australia, followed by Brisbane and Canberra. One thing with the Canberra job market is they actually look for the majority of the workforce in Canberra is contracting and public servants. So public servants is working for the government. Government work is generally quite stable. People are looking to if you have a contract, you'll likely get extended, and you're going to get paid quite a lot of money. The reason that this is like this is, first of all, obviously the Australian Parliament is in Canberra, but second of all, no one wants to live in Canberra. I lived in Canberra for 1 year. I did not like it. It was cold. It was rainy. I don't want to deter you, but if you like the beach, then you won't like Canberra. But you will get paid a lot of money, and the real estate is cheaper than in Sydney. So in terms of quality of life, I mean, that's something that you can probably consider. A little bit about salary expectations. Just going back on what I was saying with the different job markets, you will get paid the most in Sydney, probably second most in Canberra, then Melbourne, then Brisbane, and then your other smaller states will be next. For more information about salaries, I've actually got a salary guide I can give to people to give you a bit of an understanding of what your worth would be. I know sometimes it's hard to know because you will be asked quite a lot when you're interviewing how much money you're expecting. So I'm more than happy to chat to people about what they should be putting themselves forward. I will say that if you are new to the country and maybe your communication skills are struggling in that initial period when you're learning English in the Australian market, to put yourself slightly less, maybe 10 to 20% less, it's going to make you really desirable, and it's going to make you hot property. You're more likely to get more offers. Never overprice yourself when you're new to the job market. And the last point is how to look for job and searches. So one thing to know about yourself is figure out what job you want. Be really specific. If you've been an iOS developer for 20 years and in the last 4 years you've changed, you're not going to be desirable for iOS developers or for a senior person in your other field. So just think about what is the best way to market yourself. Where do you look really knowledgeable? Which technology do you know the most? If you're looking for a career change, I would suggest to change once you're in a job. Get the job first. So once you know your technology stack, what I would do is put whatever your key characteristic into the search engine on Seek, see what comes up, look at all the job ads that you're interested in, and tailor your resume to suit that. So we'll go into that in a bit more detail soon. Why don't you hear back from a job or a recruiter or the company? 2 main reasons. 1, your CV wasn't good enough. You're not suitable. And second of all, you're not from that state. So a lot of people will apply interstate, just going all across Australia. Be aware that with companies, a lot of them share a database. And if they look and see that you've applied for jobs in Melbourne, in Sydney, in Canberra, in Darwin, in Perth, they're going to think, this person, we don't know where they live. They're applying everywhere. They're probably not that good. We can see they've got multiple applications. None of them are tailored for the job. It puts a lot of doubt in their mind. So that's where I'm going into detail about make sure you're sending valid, well thought through applications, and consider where you want to live. But it is more difficult to get a job if you're trying to get the job before moving there. It's better to move first, would be my suggestion. And obviously have that resume Well done. So, talking about resumes, what to include, what not to include, do's and don'ts. It can be quite tricky to put together a really well thought through resume. The key thing to have to stand out, especially if you're struggling with that first job in Australia, is to always learn and to demonstrate that. I've spoken to many candidates that have gone through have put through many applications, and they've told me that they've actually done Udemy training and they've done an online course with their company and they've actually got this certificate and that certificate, but they're not accredited, so that's why they didn't put it on. They put in they have a master's from Australia, but they didn't put in their bachelor's from back in China or India. And this is all really essential stuff. So I really suggest to put all those details in. Show it on your first page, show education and training, and show every single thing that you've done. I've got one guy who was originally from Hong Kong and he moved over here. He's a brilliant solutions architect contractor. His first page on his resume, he has about 30 certificates, which seems crazy. And some people are going to go, oh, this is too much. But a client who's looking for a smart person and wants someone who is innovative and keeping up with the up-to-date technology, this is going to wow them. So that's definitely something to include all of it. Another thing to include, one thing that I wouldn't include actually is some people put in their marital status, and some people put in their full address, and some people put in a lot of information about a job that they had 5 years ago that it has nothing to do with the job that they want to get now. All that stuff is not relevant. It makes your resume really long with material that no one wants to read. So just think about trimming out what isn't necessary. Another important thing to put into your resume, so another do, is your visa status. This is really important. It's going to save you a lot of conversations where someone says, great, you're perfect for the job. What's your visa? Oh, sorry, you're not relevant. Waste of time. So make sure you put that on the top. That's a really good do. And you can put your suburb where you live, just so they know if you're close. If you're open to relocating, you don't really care, you don't have to put the suburb on, that's fine. And a hyperlink to your LinkedIn account, that's another do. And keep your LinkedIn up to date. That's really important as well. Make sure, another thing, that your LinkedIn represents your resume. You want to have the dates lined up, and you want it to all match. You don't want to have different titles. You don't want any reason for them to doubt your sincerity. Another thing is the layout. You want to make it clear and concise. Always put your job, the date, a blurb about the company, and what your tasks were, and make sure you're mentioning tasks that you want to do in the future. If you were doing a lot of admin style tasks or testing and you don't want to be a tester, put a little bit in, but don't have half of your resume listed as these qualities. So that's a tip there. Interviewing. One thing that I would mention is to be prepared for everything. So that's, I'm sure that's really hard to do, but be prepared for the company and be prepared for the position. Make sure you really understand what this position is asking for you. I have to admit, when I first interviewed for recruitment, they asked me, the second question was, what do you think you're doing in this job? And honestly, I was like, I don't really know. Making calls, making clients, getting people jobs, that's pretty standard, right? Like, I'm recruiting for jobs. And that was an okay answer. I somehow bluffed it to make it sound okay. But the truth was, I didn't really know what a recruiter did. So you have to know. I don't know how I got that job. I think I was a bit lucky, must have charmed them. But make sure you know exactly what the job is. Also do your research into the company, and I don't just mean going to their website. I mean Google articles. Find something that's interesting. If they're implementing new artificial intelligence technology, if they just did a merger with another company, if anything you can find that you find interesting, that's worth bringing up, because when you first walk into an interview, you have 20 seconds of small talk where they meet you at the door and they walk you up. So if you're talking about, how was your day? Yeah, I fed my cat. Yep, that's great. My hamster died. That's kind of funny. But if you want to stand out, you can say, how are you? Yada, yada. And then say, that's really interesting that you've actually decided to merge with this company. I actually have also applied for one of their roles, but I'm assuming that they're all working together. Is it the same team? And then they go, okay, this person is switched on. So that's a really cool tip. What an interviewer wants from you. This is really simple, but it's hard to do without practice. So this is where I suggest down the bottom my point, mock interviews are important, because anyone can say, they can impress someone until they're actually trying to do it. But something that the interview wants from you is they want you to be concise and answer questions. That sounds simple, but I have many a time I interview at least 5 people a week. I will ask a question and I don't get the answer. So it does happen. You say, tell me what you know about Python. And they say, well, actually, when I first started in software engineering, I was working with C# and yada, 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 C#. And you're going, this is going nowhere. I'm not getting my answer. And you have to ask it 1 or 2 or maybe 3 times. And that gets frustrating for an interviewer, and they think you're not listening. So make sure you listen to what the question is and you answer that question. If you don't know the answer or you don't have that skill, start with that. Say, I haven't worked with that before. I have worked with something similar. Did you want to know more about that? And then they'll tell you yes or no. So it's something that it's hard to change in your mind, but you have to answer their questions correctly. Second thing is, another point I will mention is body language. So it's really hard in an interview when you're uncomfortable and you're nervous to look relaxed, but it's the best thing you can do. If they see you be relaxed, they will be relaxed, which means the questions will be nicer. It will be more friendly. And it's a really good trait to have. So think about how you would normally sit in your chair. Don't cross your arms. Sit in an upright position. Don't look lazy, but sit so you're sort of comfortable and you're relaxed, and talk to them with a smile and laugh at their jokes and sort of try to feel them out, and ask them a little personal question. If you notice something about them, they're wearing Ralph Lauren and your son likes Ralph Lauren, mention that, and that just makes it a little bit more personal. Body language is a little bit more relaxed, and they'll start to like you, because people will hire people they like. Typical do's and don'ts of an interview. Some things that you don't bore them. don't talk so much about one topic that they're starting to get bored. You can tell when someone's not that interested in what you're saying. So try to keep it, so the do here is keep it concise. Keep the answers, put as much information into each answer, and try to, not let things go on too long. It's a conversation. So yeah, that's some tips that I can offer there. So mock interviews, this is what I'm saying, are important. If you do them with your friends, if you do them with a professional, it's really good to get someone else's feedback of how you come across, because until you're sitting there in the hot seat getting asked questions, you sometimes don't know how you're going to react. So that's something that I would suggest there. One thing you're probably wondering is, how do I get a job in a pandemic? This is something that hasn't happened before. So there are some extra things that you can do. And the number one thing is dedication and resilience. So you can't send out 1 or 2 applications a week and say, no one's calling me back, this isn't fair, because you're going to have to work harder. You're going to have to be more thorough with each application. And it doesn't mean sending out 100 applications a week, but it means sending out 2 or 3 really specific, well thought through, time and preparation to go towards those applications. So dedication and resilience, you have to be aware you're going to get knocked back more probably than you regularly would. So keep your mental health in check. Just understand you're not the only one in this boat. Do what you can do to keep yourself feeling good, because you will get knocked back quite a lot. Another thing you can ask, though, is ask for reasons why, especially with working with a recruiter, because the recruiter is that middle person. Ask them for feedback. And if they don't have feedback from the client, ask them, why do you think that they didn't get back to me? Get honest answers and see if you can change what, accordingly. And be prepared to wait, obviously. But going on to the point is being extra thorough, even with short-term contracts, even if it's a 6 to 8 week contract and they talk about one specific skill in your resume, you can't look overqualified. That's something else sometimes people do, is they say, well, I can easily do this job, so my application is fine, I'll send that through. They're asking for someone who knows VB.net. I've been working with Microsoft for 45 years and I know Azure like the back of my hand, and I've done implementations and integrations and migrations and everything you can imagine. It's too much. If you want if you're applying for a simple job, maybe look at taking some really impressive stuff out if it's a short-term contract. So, it's not often what you do, but in these sort of times, you've got to look at what are they looking for, and try to change your application to that. So being extra thorough means that you really do your research into the company, into the job, and you change your resume accordingly. Cover letters, they're not really important for private sector. For public sector, which is government, it is important. In fact, it's mandatory. So it's good to have a cover letter if you're applying for government jobs ready to go that you just change every now and then. Don't worry about sending one for every private sector role. It can be a bit of a waste of time. But make sure with your resume, you mention those skills more than once. If they're looking for someone who's done an implementation or a migration, make sure that project is really emphasized in your skills. If they're looking for someone who's got an interesting stack like MERN, which is Mongo, Express, React, and Node.js, make sure you mention MERN, that acronym. Put it more than one time in your resume. So when me or someone else is doing this search, your application is one of the first to pop up. So be mindful of how many times you list a certain skill. Don't lie. Don't mention that don't put Python in 5 times when you've worked with Python for maybe 1 week on a small project that you don't really understand it, because you'll get all these unsolicited calls. But make sure what you know, and your skills, make sure that's really emphasized. Keep a list of companies and jobs that you have applied to. Put it in one place and keep that place on you. Maybe your phone is easier, but it's good to keep when you get a phone call saying, hi, this is Tahlia calling from Qantas. You go, I remember applying to Qantas. I remember it was this job. I've got it here in my phone. Now I can have the conversation, as opposed to saying who, what, when, where. I'm not really sure I'm on the roll. It's hard to, you don't want to start playing phone tag when you say, can you call me back at this time? And they call you back and then they're not ready and you're not ready, and then you miss out. So it's good to have something in your phone or a notebook or something, your laptop or something, where you keep all that up to date. Next point that I make. Now, this is an opinion, so just bear that in mind. But industry, I'm right now going through the pandemic. The industries that I, as a recruiter, am seeing the most going in the right direction is e-commerce, number 1. So if you're a front-end developer, or you've worked on e-commerce or Shopify WooCommerce, anything like that, or you're interested in that sort of web development space, or anything else in a technical capacity in the e-commerce side of things, make sure you if you're interested in that area, start training yourself. Start putting new things into your resume. Start making your resume look really appealing in that space, because that's a space that I've seen booming. Second industry that I've seen is government. Right now is contracting a little bit, but I can see there's an election happening in Queensland. There's elections happening all the time. New budgets are going to get announced, and potentially we're going to see roles continue on. But with that one and mining as well, I've definitely seen some movement in mining. It seems to be quite a consistent industry. And health, of course. Health and defense. Defense, I haven't seen a lot of growth, but I've seen it being quite constant. And I've seen health. Health has obviously grown. So, Queensland Health, Ramsay Health, there's a multitude of Nick Scallion, these sort of companies. Have a look into the health industry in Australia. Have a look into these different companies and then type in these companies in Seek and see who's hiring and what sort of jobs are available, because this is the sort of sectors, be a bit smart in which sector you look to apply to, because this could help you. Another little trick I'll add in is to look at people on LinkedIn. If you go to these people and hiring managers page, it pops up for them. If you go onto my page, it pops up for me. I can see you were looking at me. Then I'm going to look at you and I'm going to see that you have a really great set of skills. That's going to entice me to call you. If you're just going on LinkedIn and you're too afraid to send connections or messages, which is fine, even going onto their page and viewing them, that gives them a notification. So be active on LinkedIn. That's the last point there. Engage in your network. Make posts. Be interesting. Make sure that your name is coming up, you're liking things, you're commenting on things. The more active you are, the more likely you are going to come up in my searches when I'm looking for your skill. So that's another really important thing. Last thing I'll quickly mention is salary. Be humble with your salary. Look at your salary, take a bit of a hit. If you're worth 100, take 90. Say I'm worth 100. Normally I'd go for 100. But I'm considering taking roles at 90K because I understand the situation and budgets are cut. Straight away, I think, great, you're switched on, you're going to be easy, you're going to be flexible, my client's going to like you. These are good things to mention. So those are my tips there. And it actually means we're come to the end of my slideshow, and if anyone has any questions, I would love to answer them.
Oh, thank you very much, Tahlia. That's very helpful information. I believe many people like myself are taking notes, and there's a lot of things I heard for the first time here. So we've got it's almost more than 200 people here. So I will be asking questions. I have been collecting questions. So the first one is actually a couple of people asking about the visa status. So comparing to those who have permanent residency or citizenship, for those ones who doesn't, how much percentage-wise they are in disadvantage?
So I would say, first of all, if you're applying to government and defence, it probably will matter more. If you're applying to contracts, it matters much less. So that's the different targeted approach that you can have depending on your visa. If you have a student visa, unfortunately, you're going to be the person experiencing the most difficulty finding a job. You're going to get people call you, you're in a student visa, I don't want to talk to you, I'm sorry. That's the type of response you will get. So it will be tough. There's nothing you can really do. Graduate visa is fine for contracts and whatnot. I think it's 487 and 485 visas, working visas, spousal visas. If you're on a partnership visa, these visas are generally fine. If your end date is more than 2 years on your visa, companies will still hire you permanently. That usually isn't an issue. Larger corporations might be a bit tougher. It does depend on the client, but if you have at least 2 years, you generally should be fine. Does that answer the question?
Definitely. So further on this question, is there any suggestion for those who doesn't have a permanent residency or citizenship? Is there anything special for them to do?
I would say these people who don't have these things, one thing with a recruitment agency, you will probably be contacted by a recruitment agency and apply for jobs that's listed by a recruitment agency more frequently than the actual client. This is quite normal. If you are someone who has restrictions on your visa, but you are confident in your skills, this is where you should take it on yourself to actually go directly as much as you can. If you're applying to a company, and you've got the company's name and you know what the company is, send someone in that company in a senior position who's a technical lead or whatever job you are, a message or a connection on LinkedIn. This is where being active on LinkedIn is more important, because people will use an agency and they pay a fee because they want a perfect candidate. They're going to, if they're going to take on someone who's not a perfect candidate, such as a visa restriction, they don't want to pay a fee for that. So going directly and being smart on LinkedIn, that's probably going to be to your success and advantage.
Cool. Thank you. I think that's very helpful. Answers pretty much all of the PR or citizenship related inquiries. So the next area people are asking is about the overseas experience versus local experience. So like for similar years of local experience and overseas experience, how do you weigh them and how do you compare them, or how your client is actually treating them?
Yeah. Okay. Well, this is where salary comes into. It's a bit unfortunate. I think if you come from overseas and your skills are as good as someone who's worked in Australia, you shouldn't be paid less. But that's my opinion, and it's not how it is. So I think the best thing that you can do, especially if you're struggling with communication skills for the beginning, you will get better when you live here for a long time. But it is good to be humble with salary. If you can put yourself in 10% less than what the expectation is, or if you talk to them directly and say money isn't your number one priority, all you want to do is to upskill and to get into your preferred industry and to learn and to grow. These are things that they're thinking, okay, they're talking about what they can give to me rather than what I give to them. So this makes you a really appealing candidate, especially if you do your homework and you do really well in technical interviews. This makes you really appealing, and you will probably have multiple offers when you do this. So unfortunately, that's sort of the way it is, and that's probably the reality of the advice I can give.
Thanks. I think that's perfect answer. The next one is also related to overseas. So do you have any candidates applying directly from offshore?
Yeah,
and
we do.
what's the difference, and what's the process or things to notice?
So in my time recruiting, which is quite a few years now, I have had one client who has told me they have hired someone directly from overseas who has then got the visa, then moved over to Australia. It is quite rare. Obviously the best thing is to move to where you want to go before getting the job. If you're serious about moving to Australia, move first and try to have enough savings so you can survive, obviously, when you come here. But that's if you're looking at your options and you say, I can move to Australia or I can stay here and wait, the best thing to do is to come to Australia, because it shows your level of commitment of getting a job. Any advice if you are staying in your country and you're applying is to get your visa 100% sorted. You can say to them, I have this visa, I have no work restrictions, and I'm available to start as soon as my plane arrives in Australia. Obviously when the pandemic's over. But if you're able to relocate within 1 week or 2 weeks, and everything in terms of your legalities, your visa, everything like that is already taken care of, that will boost your opportunity.
Oh, cool. Thanks. So first on this question, have you ever dealt with any client, company that is willing to sponsor like a visa or like a similar thing? And what will be that process?
So I have worked with companies that have done sponsorships before, but not through a recruitment agency. So again, with a recruitment agency, if anyone is unaware, a client will pay us to find them a suitable candidate. If it's someone who is not 100% suitable, it is better to go directly. I do know some companies who will pay sponsorships. It is good to know yourself what the process is inside and out. If you are serious about needing a sponsorship, that's the only way you can sort of make it work in Australia. Do your homework, know exactly what they need. So when the opportunity arises in the interview to talk about it, you can tell them it's actually quite simple. All you need to do is this, this, and this, and then I'll take care of the rest, or my solicitor will take care of the rest. The easier you and more appealing you can make it for them and make it sound like it's not difficult on their behalf, this will increase your chances. So doing your homework and being really well prepared and making it simple is my suggestion.
Oh, absolutely. I think it's very important for the company to feel that you are the right fit, and they will do probably anything they can to get you in. Oh, thanks for this. The next area is about the cause in Korea. Okay, some people is asking, they've been working in one area, for example, technology, and then have a break of their career and then reapplying jobs in that area. How much influence or effect of this type of scenario will be?
Sorry, what was the last part of that question?
I mean, how bad will this like a gap of career?
How bad of an impact? Okay.
Yeah.
What my suggestion is if you do have a gap, I'm sure it's a legitimate reason. So make them feel a bit of empathy. You know, if you're a mother, that's really like you're a mother to your child. Of course, you needed to take a break. That's easy to empathize with. If you just wanted to holiday and for no real reason, you just felt like it, and then you thought you would try to do some certificate, and then you decided halfway through, I don't want to do it anymore, and you're living with your parents, you know, this doesn't look good. It makes you look lazy. So if you are talking about a gap and you have a legitimate reason, you know, parenting, something bad has happened in your life, there's some reason, tell them as much as you're comfortable to tell them, to make them realize that it was necessary in your life to take this. Build that little bit of trust and empathy to make them think you're not lazy, you needed to take that work. And then the other thing, that it's not always possible, but if you can continue studying and learning in that time, that will be really to your advantage. You can say, I had to look after my mother who was ill, but I was still keeping up to date with the latest technology. They're going to think, wow, you're such an impressive person. You're a hard worker. This is amazing. You will have to take a bit of a hit to your salary. If you were on 100,000, you took a year off, maybe you'll get 100, maybe you'll get 95 just because they're thinking you've got that gap for a year. Again, be humble in salary. That's always the best sort of thing that you can suggest. But yeah, build empathy and show that you were continually learning. You did freelancing, you did projects, you did a startup company, whatever. Just show that you were doing something in that time that's relevant, and you should be fine in that sense.
Oh, thanks. So the other related question about the gap is about age. We all know by law we cannot discriminate anyone because of their age. So speaking of this, do age really playing a role, if any, in job hunting?
Look, I will, as a recruitment agency and a recruiter, I'm non-discriminatory. Definitely not. If you have the skills and you're relevant, I will represent you to the role, as will almost all recruiters. clients are different, you know, and some things are hard. It's not necessarily, I think discriminatory is different to preference. I see them as two different things. If you look into a company and everyone in that company has 2 or 3 years experience, they're probably all in their mid-20s. If you're 45 and you apply for that company, they probably are looking to maintain some sort of culture, and you may not be successful for that reason. Not because you're old, but because they're all going out, you know, drinking on a Friday night, everyone's involved, and maybe you have to go home to your children, and maybe that environment isn't for you. So I think that's where it comes to research. And if you're applying directly to companies, or you're not getting success with your applications, you have time to go through companies, which not everyone does, I understand that, but it's another question to ask your recruiter or to ask the person who's the hiring manager. Tell me a little bit about the team. That's all you need to say. They'll say there's 5 or 6 people, they all have families, they work 9 to 5, yada yada. You go, okay, that's great for me. You know, it's you need to sort of suss out what the environment is. If you feel that you are, you know, approaching an older age and you're being rejected quite a few times, there is something you can do where you can take off experience from the 90s from your resume, not because people are discriminatory, but it just, if you want to trial and error something to change it up, that is something that you can try. But I don't think it comes down to discrimination. I think it comes down to preferences to continue it as type of culture. So I know that's not what, you know, it's not a black and white answer that maybe people want to hear, but I think at the end of the day, that's sort of what it comes down to. But generally in the IT team, it's not as important. If you're looking in, you know, marketing, or you're looking in sales, where you're like a people person and you're always hosting events and things like this, they probably will focus on culture and personality fit more so, you know, than other things. But in IT, you need to do the skills, you need to code, you need to be able to assess and analyze. These things are generally taken as more important. So in that sense, I'd say IT team would be the least discriminatory sector to be involved in, from my opinion and from what I've seen.
Agree. I think Australia is probably one of the best country doing against the discrimination, and IT is one of the industry in this country who is doing pretty good. So I believe it's more like a culture fit thing instead of like aging discriminative. Cool.
Yeah, I believe so.
Thanks for this. So let's enter into the next area. That is like which job area I should apply if I have multiple experience. For example, there's a people asking, I've been working as a tester, I've been working as a developer, I've been working as a product owner, and I'm not really sure which area should I apply. Do you have any tips for them?
Yeah. Well, this is definitely something where it comes down to changing up your applications and focusing on what your skills are. Excuse me. So, for instance, if you're a tester, if you've done testing and you've done developing, that's usually pretty hand in hand. And if you've got a title as a tester 5 years ago and the last 5 years you're a developer, you know, people will see that as you're a good developer because you write the code and then you test the code. You don't need someone else to test it for you. So that's usually an advantage to a resume. If you have something like you've done, you know, business analyst, and then you've moved into a development role, and then you've moved into an infrastructure role, they're all quite different. So this is where it comes down to you deciding exactly what you want to do and emphasizing that by showing your commitment to that area. So if you're wanting to be in one specific area, or you tried something for a couple of years and you go, hey, that's not for me, I didn't enjoy it, this is where you have to accept you're probably going to take a pay cut for your next job if you're trying to do a bit of a career change. If it's not a change, if it's just moving on, to make your resume shine in that area, So to take out anything irrelevant, if you're applying for an infrastructure job, I don't need to know about your your testing skills or things like that, something that's not relevant to that job that you're applying for. I don't need to know that. So take that out, or make it really brief, make it a very small component of the resume. And then do training. I can't sort of emphasize this enough, but even if it's a day course on Udemy, make sure you're showing that you're keeping up to date in the area that's your preference, and put that on your resume to show you're active and engaged in that space. So those are the two things. Show you're active and engaged by training, and make sure your application is relevant for the industry you're trying to get into, and make sure your LinkedIn reflects that also. That would be my suggestion there.
Cool. Thanks. I think it's very important to the engagement is very important. Like after all, you will be the one who know yourself the best. Like you have to ultimately decide like which area to choose. Cool. So another related question specific to a product owner or developer role. Do you feel development role has a larger market compared to product owner?
That's a good question. I think it does depend on which state you're in. Look, I think development, if you're just talking development, that's a very broad term, and that will include front-end development, back-end development, cloud servers, web development, desktop application. I think development is a very broad term, so there's probably more development jobs out there just because it includes such a large expansion of jobs. I'd say that would be what I'd say. Does that answer it? Do you want me to?
Yep. I think so. I think it's probably like a changing, because the market is always evolving. It's really hard to say like which one has more. So definitely, I think that's a good answer. So we have
I think if people, I'll just say quickly, I think if people are looking for the way that, development is going and the types of jobs that are coming up, anything related to cloud, artificial intelligence, facial recognition, and, migrations from on-prem to online, these sort of skills are becoming pretty standard now. I think 2 years ago they were sort of just happening, these projects, but now these projects are really in full swing, and this is the sort of thing. So if you're looking to upskill and you're looking for which area is moving faster, I would say if you can get involved with cloud and artificial intelligence and do little bits of research and data science and those sort of topics, these are sort of the buzz terms that are being used right now. So that's, important areas to start focusing on, whichever area in IT you're from. So yeah, that would be my insight.
Precisely. I remember around 2-3 years ago, Google have a strategy as cloud first. And recently they changed it to AI first. So that's kind of highlights where the entire IT industry is going. So I think that's matched perfectly. So we have around 10 minutes left. Let's pick 3 more questions from the list. So we do have a lot of people asking questions, but unfortunately we can't go through all of them. So you all have Tahlia's contact, and we can offline. So the next one is about the referral. When your client is asking the candidate for referral, do they have to provide their manager or anyone work with them?
Okay, so if you're up to the reference stage, are you talking about references? Or
references, sorry, not referral. I mean, after they got the offer and they asked for some references.
Okay. So it's weird in Australia. I know this isn't international, but in Australia, for some reason, for permanent jobs, we need 2 references, and for contracts, we need 1 reference. That's really, really standard. So when it comes to that, you're in your current job, you probably don't want to tell your boss you're about to go for another job. So think about, if we don't need your boss. In fact, we don't actually need someone you reported to for both cases. So if you have your most recent 2 jobs, the thing is with references is generally some places are really strict, some aren't, but generally we need someone to talk to who you've worked with in the last 12 months. Make sure you weren't in jail or something. If you can provide a boss or your direct report from your previous job, plus a colleague in your current job who really thinks you're great, that's usually enough, especially if that colleague is senior. Just someone you don't have to say they're your direct report, but you occasionally report to them. They're in the same meetings as you. They work very closely to you. You can say, you make it really simple to the person who's asking and say, I'm not happy to tell my boss just yet because I haven't told him I'm looking for another job. Are you happy for me to give you my colleague or my senior or my ex-manager who might have moved on from the business, plus someone from my previous company? So that's what I would suggest there.
Cool. I think that's yep.
I'll just add to that. Sorry, if you're brand new to Australia, see if you can have a written reference or an email address for someone in your country. It is still good to have at least one of those. Sometimes they will ask you for an Australian reference. If they want an Australian reference, it's a professional reference, someone who knows you professionally. So you can use in that instance even a doctor or even a physiotherapist or someone on a professional sense, just as a character reference. So that is an option sometimes, depending on which company it is. But yeah, I can give more information to people if they want to contact me directly as well.
Cool, no problem. Excellent. Cool. Let's move to the second from last question. As a recruiter, how long do you usually keep your candidate's resume?
Recruiters have a database and it will stay there unless you ask for them to remove it.
And does that mean, like, do you contact them after a while? Let's say 2 years later, you feel this guy might have some updates and you feel he might be a candidate. Do you contact them?
Yeah, absolutely. So that is one advantage. If you apply for a recruitment agency or even companies, most companies will have a database. If you apply for them once, they will keep your details. And maybe if you're not eligible now, you might be in the future for a different job. So yeah, you will stay on a database, which is an advantage.
Cool, thanks. Last question. So I saved this one because it's a bit open. Do you have any suggestions for junior developers? What should they do specifically?
Yeah. Okay. So first thing I'll say is generally junior developers will find it difficult to find a job through a recruitment agency. Most companies won't pay for someone with no experience a fee, if that makes sense. So as a junior, one thing that I need to say to juniors is be active. There is so many times when I have had an anomaly, which was a once-off job that was a junior person with 6 months experience. It very rarely happens. We don't have many people on the database. And I look in LinkedIn, I looked in Seek, and I can't find people. So make sure if you're a junior, don't be nervous to apply for jobs. I know it can be a bit scary and you think, oh, I just need to add this to my resume, or I just need to add this to my resume. If you want assistance, I can help you. Talk to friends, talk to family, try to get someone to build up your confidence. But if you don't have access to that, don't worry too much about it. We can see that you don't have much experience. Make sure you put every training you've done, make sure you show that you've done this side hustle, or you've done this project off your own back, or you've done stuff after university off your own back to continue your learning. Make sure you emphasize that. That's really, really important. But also don't be scared. Apply for jobs, get on LinkedIn, make your LinkedIn look amazing, and just start adding connections. The more connections you add, the bigger your network will be and the more likely someone will contact you. So you have to be really active as a junior. that would be my number one recommendation.
Fantastic. I think that's a last question we can afford today. But yeah, keep asking questions. As Tahlia mentioned, engagement and the connection is very important, because hiring, after all, is about people to people. So let's keep this going offline. Tahlia, do you have anything else to say before we finish our sharing session?
Yeah, well, I just want to say thank you to everyone to listen, and I wish you the best of luck. Just really a short segment is I'm a recruiter, but I've also started a small business, Resume Guru by Tahlia. Basically, I can help you with 2 services. It's really cheap. I'm trying to make it really affordable for people who are just getting into the job market. Half an hour to help you with your resume, or half an hour to help you do a mock interview, and I'll give you lots of feedback. I'll help you with templates. I'll help you construct really concise answers. And yeah, I've got a couple of promotions that I'm doing at the moment, which I'll chat to Eric on how to get that through. But even if you just want to chat to me about a quick question or quick advice, I'm more than happy to answer that one if I can get to that one.
Oh, thank you very much. As I mentioned earlier, I can hear people making notes, and me myself have made a couple notes. I feel people are more confident in the journey of job hunting, and I believe everybody feels the last 60 minutes is well spent with you. Thank you very much for your sharing, and we all learned something.
No worries. Thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you very much.